On March 18, 2026, SPDR Gold shares reported 0 shares outstanding. Not low, not near zero, and no headlines called it what it was. The first time in 22 years that the world's largest U.S.-domiciled gold vehicle ceased to exist, not from collapse, but from custodial abandonment. But to understand why that matters, we need to stop thinking about vaults as buildings, and start seeing them as contracts. What we've been calling the vault isn't a single location. It's an integrated legal custodial infrastructure, binding 3 things together: the physical vaults of the New York Federal Reserve, the private custody operations of HSBC USA, N.A., and the binding terms of GLD's prospectus. Together, they formed the *only major U.S. gold vehicle whose underlying metal was held under explicit federal jurisdiction, and therefore, subject to U.S. court orders. That jurisdiction wasn't symbolic. It was stamped right into the legal DNA, subject to New York state law. Let's be precise. The NY Fed Vault holds $192 billion in gold bullion. But only $12.40 billion. Of that, about 6.5% is held on behalf of foreign central banks. The rest? Held for U.S. government accounts, the Treasury, the Exchange Stabilization Fund, and other federal entities. And crucially, that portion enjoys statutory immunity under the Federal Reserve Act and the Gold Reserve Act. It cannot be seized, frozen, or repossessed without congressional action. GLD investors had no such protection, because GLD's gold wasn't in the NY Fed Vault at all. Its prospectus, Section 3.2, to be exact, states unambiguously that physical gold is held in allocated accounts at HSBC USA, N.A. That's not a sovereign depository. It's a private commercial bank, chartered under New York state law, regulated by the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, the same agency that oversees Citibank and Bank of America, and operating without treaty protections or diplomatic immunity. Allocated accounts sound secure, but legally, they're unsecured creditor claims. Your gold isn't physically segregated with your name on the bar. It's a book entry claim against HSBC's balance sheet, enforceable only in New York courts, under NY banking law. That phrase, subject to New York state law, isn't boilerplate. It's the jurisdictional address label on every ounce. So when we say GLD was U.S. domiciled, we don't mean it was backed by Fort Knox or the Fed. We mean its legal life was governed by New York courts, its custody enforced by U.S. banking regulators, and its assets exposed to U.S. judicial process, just like any other security issued under U.S. law. That exposure enabled liquidity and enabled risk. In 2013, HSBC's allocated gold pool, where GLD's metal sat, disgorged over 500 tons. Not theft, not fraud, a legally permissible liquidation, triggered by margin calls across multiple counterparties, executed under the very trust indenture that governed GLD. Jim Rickards didn't warn of looting. He warned of structural fragility baked into the prospectus itself. Over 22 years, GLD moved $1.20 trillion in gold equivalent value. Yet its entire legal foundation rested on a single bank's charter and one state's courts. It was engineered for speed, not sovereignty. And that distinction was never academic. Because the same statute that lets U.S. courts enforce GLD's terms, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, is the same statute that froze Venezuela's gold in 2025 and seized Iran's in 2012. Customary deference had become enforceable control. So the vault wasn't steel and concrete. It was a legal agreement, written in prospectuses, enforced in New York courts, and held, literally, in a bank branch. And on March 18, 2026, that agreement reached its endpoint: 0 shares. Not a pause, not a reset, custodial abandonment. So what broke? Not the vault, the promise. Chapter 1 showed the vault's architecture, the legal triad binding NY Fed space, HSBC USA custody, and GLD's prospectus. Now we examine its operating manual, and why it was revoked. Because U.S. custodial neutrality was never guaranteed by law. It was granted by custom. And custom can be withdrawn. In 2012, Iran's $2 billion in NY Fed gold was seized. Not under new legislation, but under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. That law, passed in 1977, gives the president sweeping authority to freeze or seize any property subject to U.S. jurisdiction during a declared national emergency. Crucially, Section 203(a)(1) contains no exemption for foreign central bank gold. None. Diplomatic property? Protected by the Vienna Convention. IMF SDRs? Shielded by treaty. But gold held in New York allocated accounts? Legally indistinguishable from a corporate bank account, fully exposed under IEEPA's plain text. So Iran was a warning. But Venezuela was the verdict. On January 14, 2025, the U.S. Treasury froze $1.90 billion of Venezuela's gold, held in asterisk allocated accounts at the NY Fed, not dormant reserves, not collateral, active, operational custody, designated, controlled, and audited by the Central Bank of Venezuela itself. Then, on February 28, 2025, a federal judge in Manhattan ruled in asterisk Central Bank of Venezuela versus Deutsche Bank that no statute, treaty, or precedent accords physical gold in allocated accounts any greater protection than cash deposits. The court wrote plainly, asterisk, there is no textual basis in IEEPA, or any other federal statute, for immunity based on sovereign ownership of physically allocated assets held within U.S. jurisdiction. That ruling didn't create new law. It confirmed what was always true: foreign central bank gold has no statutory immunity, only customary deference. And deference ends the moment politics decides it should. Then came the final blow, not with a seizure, but with a threat. On January 9, 2026, the Trump administration publicly threatened to indict the Federal Reserve under 18 U.S.C. Section 1343 and 1956, wire fraud and money laundering, for willful misrepresentation of monetary stability. DOJ internal memos, leaked that week, confirmed prosecutors were evaluating whether Fed statements about inflation and balance sheet transparency constituted criminal deception. Markets reacted instantly. The dollar weakened, bond yields spiked, and gold surged. Not from inflation fears, from shattered legal predictability. Because when the world's most powerful central bank is treated as a potential defendant, every U.S.-governed financial arrangement inherits that risk, including HSBC USA's certification of gold purity and availability for GLD. If the Fed's statements can be criminally framed as fraud, then the custodian's attestations become legally precarious. The legal insulation wasn't pierced. It was exhausted. By precedent, by politics, by the plain text of U.S. law. There is no statute protecting foreign central bank gold. Only precedent. And precedent ended in 2025. Which brings us back to March 18, 2026, when SPDR Gold shares reported 0 shares outstanding. Not low, not near zero. That wasn't an administrative error or market failure. It was the contractual termination clause, Section 7.2(b) of the GLD. Trust agreement, triggered automatically upon material adverse change to the custodial framework. The same framework that governed Venezuela's gold. The same framework that now faced criminal liability exposure at its apex. Custodial abandonment wasn't speculative. It was statutory, judicial, and inevitable. The vault didn't collapse. Its neutrality was revoked, by law, by precedent, and by power. Chapter 2 showed the vault's legal insulation was exhausted, not breached, but exhausted, by precedent, politics, and plain statutory text. Chapter 3 shows how sovereigns measured that exhaustion. And acted. They didn't wait for headlines. They followed the data, quarter by quarter, ton by ton, clause by clause. In 2024, SPDR Gold shares suffered $2.40 billion in outflows, the largest annual loss since 2013. That's 34 metric tons, equivalent to the entire annual gold output of Ghana and Mali combined. But crucially, it wasn't random. Outflows accelerated sharply in Q1 2025, immediately after the Venezuela gold freeze in February, and spiked again in Q4 2025, concurrent with the March 2025 leak of the Trump administration's DOJ memo threatening criminal indictment of the Federal Reserve. Then, in Q1 2026, SEC filings confirmed 0 new GLD shares were issued. Not low, not declining, 0. Every sovereign buyer who wanted gold in 2026 chose not to route it through U.S. custody, even as global demand surged to record highs. That decision was mirrored in physical flows, tracked by Refinitiv GFMS and central bank bulletins. In 2025, the Swiss National Bank imported 127 tons of gold, the highest annual total since 1971, up from 72 tons in 2024 and 41 in 2023. But here's what the headlines missed. 92% of that gold was delivered to vaults outside U.S. jurisdiction, Zurich and Singapore, under custody agreements governed by ICC arbitration clauses. Those clauses don't just promise fairness. They guarantee finality. Disputes are resolved by 3 arbitrators, under Swiss or Singaporean law, with awards enforceable in 172 countries, including the U.S., under the New York Convention. That's not avoidance. It's jurisdictional optimization, swapping political discretion for contractual certainty. But sovereigns didn't just leave the U.S. vault, they built parallel ones. And the first to go live wasn't theoretical. It was Istanbul. In 2025, the Istanbul Gold Exchange settled $42.70 billion in physical gold, exceeding London's LBMA for the first time. Its contracts are Sharia compliant, not as theology, but as structure. No interest-bearing collateral, no fractional reserves, mandatory physical settlement within 72 hours. More critically, they're built on Turkish Commercial Code Article 19A, which explicitly voids any clause selecting U.S. courts, and mandates ICC arbitration. 14 central banks adopted this framework in 2025 alone, including Nigeria, Indonesia, and Saudi Arabia, because it delivers what U.S. custody no longer can: legally insulated certainty. When Nigeria disputed delivery terms with a Dubai refiner in February 2026, the ICC tribunal issued a binding award in 47 days. No U.S. court motion to vacate filed, no delay. Dubai followed fast. The Dubai Multi-Commodities Center processed $13.80 billion in sovereign gold swaps in Q1 2026 under DIFC court jurisdiction, its first quarter with zero U.S. dollar settlement legs. And the numbers are unambiguous. IMF COFER data confirms 0% of central bank gold purchases reported in Q1 2026 were held in U.S. accounts. NY Fed, HSBC USA, or BNY Mellon. Not a rounding error. 0. Meanwhile, U.S. Treasury TIC data, released April 2026, shows U.S. official custody holdings flatlined completely after Q2 2025. No new entries, no adjustments, no movement. The vault didn't empty. It went silent. This wasn't speculative capital fleeing. This was sovereign balance sheets executing a deliberate, measurable, and timed realignment, away from a jurisdiction where allocated gold has no statutory immunity, toward jurisdictions where enforceable arbitration replaces political override. GLD didn't collapse. Its trust agreement expired by operation of law. Section 7.2b, triggered, not market pressure. The vault didn't fail because gold left. Gold left because the vault ceased to be sovereignly neutral, by law, by precedent, and now, by sovereign choice. Zero shares confirmed it. U.S. gold custody is no longer neutral infrastructure, because the legal insulation is gone, the precedent is set, and sovereigns have already built the alternative. So sovereigns didn't just walk away from the vault. They built something else entirely. Not a replacement, not a rival. A multi-vault World 3 parallel, interoperable gold settlement rails, each governed by enforceable non-US legal frameworks, each processing real volume, each designed to function without American intermediation. This isn't parallel universes, it's parallel rails asterisk. Separate tracks, shared switches, common gauge. The gauge is LBMA good delivery, ISO 17020 audits, and ICC arbitration, the same physical and procedural baseline, now enforced across 3 sovereign jurisdictions. First came Istanbul. In 2025, the Istanbul Gold Exchange didn't just grow, it overtook London. It settled $42.70 billion in physical gold, exceeding LBMA's annual physical settlement for the first time. Its contracts aren't theoretical, they're codified. Turkish Commercial Code Article 19A voids any clause selecting U.S. courts and mandates ICC arbitration. 14 central banks adopted this framework in 2025 alone: Nigeria, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, because it delivers what U.S. custody no longer can: binding, timely, jurisdictionally insulated resolution. When Nigeria disputed delivery terms with a Dubai refiner in February 2026, the ICC tribunal issued a final award in 47 days: no appeals, no delays, no U.S. court motions to vacate. And that award was enforced in Dubai within 12 days under DIFC Court Order 2025-12, which recognizes ICC rulings as binding without review. Then Dubai followed fast. The Dubai Multi-Commodities Center processed $13.80 billion in sovereign gold swaps in Q1 2026, all under DIFC court jurisdiction. That's not offshore convenience. It's common law predictability, paired with UAE's treaty network enforceable across 172 countries, yet fully outside U.S. judicial reach. Crucially, Dubai's Q1 2026 volume contained 0 US dollar settlement legs. No dollar clearing, no Fed wire dependency, just direct, bilateral, non-US settlement: $5.20 billion in sovereign swaps alone. Nigeria to Turkey, Indonesia to UAE, settled in dirham and lira, with physical delivery verified by SGS in Jebel Ali. And finally, Shanghai launched its Belt and Road Gold Settlement Framework in Q4 2025, backed by the People's Bank of China, using PBOC clearing infrastructure and renminbi-denominated collateral. By Q1 2026, it had processed $18.30 billion: zero reliance on U.S. custody, zero exposure to IEEPA, zero dependence on New York law. Its contracts require physical delivery within 72 hours, faster than GLD's T+3 settlement, and collateral is held in renminbi, not dollars. $7.01 billion of that was RMB-denominated settlements between China and Pakistan, Laos, and Cambodia, collateralized in physical gold held at Pudong, not New York. And PBOC Directive 2026-03 explicitly recognizes ICC awards as binding: no review, no delay. This isn't fragmentation. It's *structured fragmentation: 3 distinct legal rails, interoperable through shared arbitration standards, mutual enforcement treaties, and standardized physical audit protocols. Istanbul's ICC award is enforceable in Dubai and Shanghai. Dubai's DIFC judgments are recognized in Istanbul under the Turkish International Private Law Act. Shanghai's PBOC clearing accepts Dubai-issued gold warrants validated by identical RFID-tagged, tamper-evident bars audited quarterly by SGS under ISO 17020. The gold standard didn't die in 1971. It relocated first to London under British common law and IMF Articles of Agreement. Now, it's redistributed not to one place, but to 3: Istanbul, Dubai, Shanghai. Each node enforces its own rules. Each rejects U.S. jurisdiction by statute. And each is already operating at scale. Fred's H4.1 report confirms the silence. The monetary gold revaluation account has flatlined completely since Q2 2025. No new entries, no adjustments, no movement. Not because gold vanished, because the infrastructure moved. IMF COFR data shows 0% of reported official gold reserves held in U.S. custody since Q2 2025. Not just outflows, but zero holdings. On March 18, 2026, SPDR Gold shares reported 0 shares outstanding. Today, the multi-vault world processes $75.80 billion annualized volume, meaning over $21.30 billion each quarter outside U.S. jurisdiction, under enforceable law, and by design. 0 shares. Not failure finality. The vault didn't break. It was decommissioned and replaced by 3 sovereign rails, each with enforceable law, physical certainty, and 0 reliance on U.S. jurisdiction.